Hello, Expat Kingdom. This is Lane Livingston, and today on the show I'm excited because I'm going to be speaking to Casie Tennin, and she actually lived in Fregenal de la Sierra, Spain, which I'm really excited to be able to talk to her about that because this is the first interview I've done with anybody that had lived in Spain, and she's currently actually stateside, but itching to get back over to Spain, so we're going to kind of talk about that too. So Casie, I just want to take a moment. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm real excited to have you.
Thank you.
And so I thought we would just dive in with what inspired you to actually move over to Spain in the first place?
All right, so my love for being out of the States started when I lived in Argentina for 4 months. And I've always had a love for the Spanish-speaking language. And I knew that I wanted to become completely fluent. And so I graduated from Penn State University last year. And when all my friends were applying for jobs in New York City and stateside, I was like, no, not me. And so I have this, like I say, everyone has this people who have a travel bug in them have a travel bug, and you can't get it out unless you address it.
Right.
And so I wanted to become fluent in Spanish. I already did South America for 4 months, so I wanted to do Europe. And I've always had this interest in Spain, so I said, hey, why not Spain?
So you said so you started in Argentina, and then you said you'd done South America. Were there other countries in South America that you had visited?
Right. Well, so I studied abroad during my 4 years of college in Argentina for 4 months, and while I was there, I traveled to Chile and the border of Brazil. So I would like to go back and really do Brazil more. By the way, everyone, I'm roadside right now on a highway. So if you hear huge trucks going by, that's what that is. It's a huge truck. I spent 4 months there. I would like to go back to South America, but since I already spent a significant amount of time there, I wanted to do the whole Europe thing and Spain. And so it just seemed perfect at the time, and it was.
That's awesome. So are you now, you said you wanted to be fluent, so are you now fluent in Spanish?
Well, I actually had no choice but to become fluent because as the world heard Lane say, I lived in Fregenal de la Sierra. Now, that's not Madrid or Barcelona. That is a 5,000 person village. And I was the only native English speaker, and the only English speaker for that fact. I taught at a public school teaching English, and the English teacher that I taught with didn't really speak much English. So, I mean, she spoke English, but, you know, I had to talk very slowly and use my hands a lot. If I wanted to survive, there's a car leaving the parking lot right next to me.
That's fine.
So if I wanted to survive, I had to learn Spanish completely, and that was the best thing for me because I would say I actually this morning had an interview with a Spanish radio station on an international call, and that was all in Spanish on the phone, which is harder than in person because you can't see their lips move and you can't see
the gestures
mannerisms, right? So I would say I'm fluent, not perfect, but fluent.
Sure, yeah. That sounds kind of like where I'm at. You know, I've learned a lot from my wife. She's half Ecuadorian, half Italian. So I've learned a lot of Spanish and a little bit of Italian. So, you know, there's a good mix there. But I can definitely communicate. But, you know, there's some things I still don't understand, or I'll have to try to work around the conversation, if that makes sense, and get them to explain it in a different way so that I can, you know, with words that I know or understand.
Yeah. It's really, you know, it's funny how you realize your brain can be so creative when it needs to be. Like, to say the most simple thing. I mean, in the beginning, when I first arrived to my little village, I spoke Spanish. As I said, I lived in Argentina for 4 months, but I was on an American program. So it's very different when you're on your own in a little village versus in an American program in a big city. I was in Buenos Aires. And so your brain just figures out ways to say very simple things in ways that you would never, ever imagine. Like, where can I find bread? Something really simple. You in your head, you say, where is the bread located? Like, but, you know, you figure it out. And the only advice I can give anyone if you want to become fluent is just to force yourself to not have the option to speak English or whatever your first language is.
Right.
So.
When you were first getting started with Spanish and you're, submersed over there, did you find yourself getting frustrated when you couldn't communicate, as effectively as you would have liked to?
Oh yeah. um, Arrange from really simple things, like I just explained, going to the supermarket. The thing that frustrated me the most is that people didn't expect there to be a foreigner there who didn't speak English. So, I mean, who didn't speak Spanish. So when I would talk slower, or when I would struggle to say something, everyone would just look at me like, who sent in
Well,
this girl? Like,
yeah.
who
Well, and the
is
thing
she? She's
is,
not from here.
yeah.
What
Well,
is
I
she
was just
doing here?
say you could probably actually pass for being from Spain when you're over there, couldn't you?
Until I opened my mouth.
Right, sure, yeah. So that's
So
the people probably see you, and they, if they're wanting to say something to you, they probably just fly out with the Spanish right away because they don't see you as, the blonde American, because you could fit in Spain.
yeah, well, it's actually so funny that you say the blonde American because, so I taught in an English school there. I did a program. It's called the Auxiliar Conversación de Auxiliar.
Yeah.
Um, Excuse me, Auxiliar de Conversación. In case anyone wants to look that up, I want to make sure I get it right. So it's a cultural assistant program, and what you do is you go to a public school there and teach the children English. And it was really funny because when I got there, all of my students had made like posters and welcome cards for me, like "Hola, Casey, coming from the USA," and they all drew me blonde. And I come in the first day, and they're like, "Wait a minute, you're from America?" And I'm
Right.
like, "We're not all blonde."
That's awesome. Well, so then let me ask. I guess let's just back up a little bit. And when it comes to speaking Spanish or learning Spanish, and you get submersed into a place maybe where there are no other expats or other Americans or other people that speak English, what kind of tips or advice would you give for somebody to be able to really kind of pick up on it and just accelerate their learning curve?
Like I kind of mentioned before, I mean, the only way to truly learn a language is to immerse yourself in the language. I mean, I've studied Spanish in classes for years, and I didn't learn anything. I mean, I've taken Spanish classes for maybe 5, 6 years, and I knew how to say, like, conjugate the basic verbs and say, "Where is the bathroom? Hi, how are you?"
Hmm.
And that's basically it. And so the way I learned is just speaking and giving myself no option but to speak the language. And not everyone obviously has that opportunity to immerse themselves, pick up their life and move to a foreign country where there are no English speakers. But the best advice I could give is find a language partner who is trying to learn English and do an intercambio, so
Hmm.
language exchange,
Hmm.
and spend whether it's an hour a week over coffee or a drink, just speaking 30 minutes English, 30 minutes Spanish. That's, I would say, the most obtainable way for people anywhere to learn a language. Because if you're in America, at least, you can find anywhere someone who's trying to improve their English,
Right.
whose first language is Spanish. And it's really a great way. And it's a great way to form a friendship with someone from a different background.
Yeah.
So,
I think that is an awesome idea. I think that's fantastic because it's something tangible, it's something achievable, and like you said too, one of the other benefits is going to be actually building a friendship or relationship with
yeah.
somebody local too.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things too that I know when I was trying to learn Spanish and I was really struggling at first, the thing I had to do was give myself permission to make mistakes and to not be
Yeah.
so self-conscious that I've got to
Mm-hmm.
get it perfect and all that. So I would say that's the other big thing I would recommend for people is just
Definitely.
give yourself that freedom to make mistakes. And
Absolutely.
people are going to laugh at you from time to time, but for the most part, people are going to understand that and they're going to appreciate you putting in
I
that effort
appreciate it.
too. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I'm really glad you brought that up too, because that was a biggest problem I saw with people who were trying to learn English in Spain. They have a lot of embarrassment. Like I mean, I have a lot of embarrassment still when I talk. My pronunciation, I sound like an American trying to speak Spanish, but I am an American trying to speak Spanish.
yeah.
So they understand and they welcome it. And one goal of mine as an English teacher over there was to just, I had my kids just try to be as silly as possible when they spoke English, because you have to just let go of all of embarrassment. Because you can't feel embarrassed. You just have to say, you're going to make mistakes. It's part of learning.
Right.
And the only way to get better is if you make those mistakes. And the way I think about it is, when you talk to someone who speaks English as a second language, when they make a mistake, you never judge them and say, why did they just make that mistake? You say, you understand what they're trying to say, and you have a conversation with them.
Right.
You know that their first language isn't English, and it's the same thing learning Spanish or whatever second language you want to learn. You just talk and people will understand you,
Yeah, that's awesome. This made me think of, it's kind of off subject, but on subject. When my wife and I first started dating, I went over to her parents' house, and they cooked a nice dinner and all this stuff, and I wanted to thank my mother-in-law, my future mother-in-law, in Spanish for the meal, and say, how excellent it was or whatever. And so I asked Francesca and some of her cousins, how do I say, thank you, the dinner was great or whatever. And I forget, I don't remember what I should have said, but they told me to say, buenas nalgas. And so basically, I was telling my mother-in-law that she had a nice butt. And so when I told her that, and she just turned bright red, and she was like, she knew, they put me up to it, and I was completely innocent in the whole deal. But again, that was one of those things that I had to kind of go through, and I got embarrassed, but it was fun, and you just end up letting everything go and just have fun with it. So,
and there's a benefit. You can get away with anything when you're speaking your second language. Anything.
Yeah.
Because they'll say, oh, the cute little foreigner. She doesn't know what she's saying.
Right.
And it's really great. I've gotten away with it a lot.
Yeah.